do you know Frank Gaffney?
Yes, I do.
And you've been on his show dozens of times.
I was on his show some, yes, Senator.
I have here over 20 times, and he has talked about Muslims should be, who abide by the adherence to their faith should be considered, should be tried for acts of sedition and should be prosecuted. Did you remain silent when you were on his show? Did you ever question? Because I have a lot of his statements here. Mm-hmm. Did you remain silent on the? And he's, from my notes at least, you're a friend of his. Were you silent in your position of authority against these words that are violative of the American Constitution? Were you silent with him?
Now, when I heard Frank Gaffney's name, I thought, well, wait a second. I know Frank Gaffney. Is that the same Frank Gaffney I know? The one that's on Fox News? The one who used to serve in the Reagan administration? The one who has degrees from Georgetown University and Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies? Is that the same Frank Gaffney? Well, it turns out it is. And Frank is on the Newsmaker line right now. Frank, welcome to our program.
Todd, thank you so much for having me and for that interesting setup.
Yeah, how about... Well,
it's a good point of departure.
Well, I was just dumbfounded yesterday by watching Cory Booker grilling Mike Pompeo on Islam, and I wanted to get your reaction because, I mean, he was smearing your good name out there, Cory Booker was.
Well, I'm sorry to report that he had to take a number to do that. There have been a lot of people doing it, and partly that's why he did it. It's interesting. He more or less read from the talking points that have been disseminated by the Council on American Islamic Relations, which we've documented is actually not just a Muslim Brotherhood front, it is a Hamas front. That would be a designated terrorist organization. But their beef with me, and unfortunately others like the Southern Poverty Law Center that work closely with them and other folks on the radical left as well, is their determination to silence not just me, but people, who have done what I've tried to do, which is to really study and understand and be able to articulate the threat posed not by all Muslims, but by those who adhere to the doctrine that they call Sharia. And as you know, Todd, Sharia supremacism is an ideology that has more in common with Nazism and communism than it does, well, faith that we're familiar with, particularly Christianity and Judaism. But it's definitely the kind of thing that you'd hope a Cory Booker, who has a lot of Sharia-adherent mosques in his state, would know something about. You'd like to think that other members of the Foreign Relations Committee, Ed Markey went off on his own tear about, how we have to, ignore really the nature of Sharia in favor of making sure we don't give any offense to Muslims. These are the sorts of things that I would like to have had really properly debated, not necessarily in the context of Mike Pompeo's hearing, but at some point. In fact, I've asked the Foreign Relations Committee to organize some hearings for that purpose, to clarify what my views are for sure, but also what the truth is. And I hope they'll do it. I'm not holding my breath.
On the Newsmaker line is Frank Gaffney, and ladies and gentlemen, he is the president and CEO of the Center for Security Policy, and also a friend of Mike Pompeo. I have to tell you, Mr. Gaffney, I was very encouraged to hear that. Because we need someone in the State Department who knows the lay of the land when it comes to these Islamic radicals out there.
We do, and I think Mike does. The care that he has exercised in I think it's 13 conversations, not 20, but 13 conversations I've had with him on our radio program, Secure Freedom Radio, have really impressed me, as have private conversations as well. That this is a thoughtful, highly educated, and very courageous man. I really think he's a terrific choice for Secretary of State at this moment in our history. And the combination of him coming to this job, hopefully soon, and John Bolton now installed as the National Security Advisor means that the president finally has a team that I think could deliver or help him deliver on the kinds of campaign promises that he made with respect, by the way, to Sharia supremacism, among other things. On the 15th of August, 2016, Todd, you may remember, it was one of the best speeches I think he gave as a presidential candidate. Donald Trump laid out his strategy for dealing what he called radical Islamic terrorism, and it was superb. And it happens to be very much something I know I'm aligned with, and I think Mike Pompeo is, and John Bolton as well. So this would be a great moment if we can actually begin to see what the president promised to do, and I think the American people elected him to do about these very serious threats.
Frank, it was interesting to watch Cory Booker go from talking about Islam to whether or not Mike Pompeo believes that gay sex is a perversion. And the irony here is that under those radical Islamic regimes, gays are put to death. They've been thrown off of buildings. And he's going after Mike Pompeo?
Yeah, it is one of those ideological disconnects. The left, in making common cause with these Sharia supremacists is one way of describing them, has to set aside some very inconvenient truths about Sharia supremacism. They seem willing to do it in this red-green axis, as we call, without regard for the fact that it's. And by the way, it's not just gays and transgender individuals and the like who are, of course, prominent fixtures of the Democratic sort of coalitions. It's Jews. It's people who have no faith at all or a faith other than Islam. I mean, these are all people, feminists, heaven's sakes, who are not well thought of by Sharia supremacists. And it's bizarre for so many on the left, including, I guess, Senator Booker, to simply give them a pass on that. And I would argue that we can't, if we want to live in a society in which those people, among others, are allowed to be free and secure. And they're very much at risk to the agenda of these guys who believe it's God's will for them to be forced to submit to this horrific draconian oppression known as Sharia.
Why is it that Democrats like Cory Booker are turning a blind eye to all this? Are they scared of the Islamic radicals?
I think that's operating. I wouldn't presume to speak for Senator Booker or anybody for that matter, but I think it's not an accident, comrade, as they say, Todd, that you have in the background, and by the way, groups like CARE and the Islamic Society of North America, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, and the Muslim American Society, and on and on. These groups are adept at kind of pointing to those violent guys as a source of enforcers, So I think that probably is operating. I mentioned, I think, that Senator Booker has some very formidable Muslim Brotherhood and jihadist sympathizing Sharia supremacist communities in his constituency. So it may just be simple political calculation that he doesn't want to alienate them. He wants their votes. He wants their money and so on. That would certainly, I think, be part of this. But I think more generally, you find that the left has decided that they're going to throw in with these folks who have a very different view of the ultimate end state, and it's bizarre, is all I can say. And I hope that we could have a conversation in which we tease out what are they thinking and make them really work through it, because I think in the end they're going to come to the same conclusion that most sensible people do, which is this is really something we don't want to support, let alone enable to advance in our country at the expense of our freedoms.
Frank, we're going to have to lead the conversation there. We would love to have you back on again to talk about these important issues facing the nation. And I really do appreciate the work you do, and we think you're good people here at the radio program.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much, and I'm happy to participate anytime. I got to just say, if people want more information on all of this, it's available for free at securefreedom.org.
Very good. Frank Gaffney, ladies and gentlemen, from the Center for Security Policy. He's one of the good guys. And quite frankly, Cory Booker owes him an apology.